Quick question. How much pain does it take before a person stops caring about being good? Not angry, not bitter, I mean truly dangerous. Because the women in this video didn't become feared overnight. They were shaped by courts where love was fake, power was survival, and weakness could get you killed. History remembers these women as ruthless. But the more I read about them, the more I started asking a different question. What kind of world forces a person to become feared just to survive? Because these weren't fantasy villains. These were real women living inside courts built on paranoia, violence, and power. One of them destroyed her rival so brutally people wrote about it for centuries. Another outplayed an empire that never wanted her in power to begin with. And one became a military commander in a world built on war and human sacrifice. And honestly, some parts of these stories genuinely stayed with me. Let's begin. The woman who turned revenge into state policy. So here's the thing about Empress Lü Zhi. People remember her as cruel, sadistic, ruthless, and honestly, some of what she did was horrifying. After her husband Emperor Gaozu died, Lü Zhi became the real power behind the Han dynasty. But before that, she spent years getting humiliated inside the imperial court system. That matters, because imperial courts weren't families, they were survival arenas. Every woman there was disposable. Your value depended on whether a man favored you today. And one of the emperor's favorite concubines was a woman named Consort Qi. Lü Zhi hated her, not in a petty way, in a deeply personal way. Consort Qi represented everything that threatened her survival: youth, beauty, influence, and the possibility that her own son would lose power. So when the emperor died and Lü Zhi finally gained control, she didn't just remove her rival, she destroyed her. She had Consort Qi mutilated, limbs cut off, eyes gouged out, tongue removed. Then she reportedly kept her alive in a latrine and called her a human pig. That story survived for over 2,000 years because even people back then were horrified by it. And look, you can't talk around that. It was brutal. But what's disturbing is why it happened. Lü Zhi had learned something early. In that system, mercy was dangerous. If another woman's son took the throne, your own children could be executed. Entire bloodlines disappeared over succession fights. So she became terrifying before anyone could destroy her first. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains the logic behind it. She wasn't operating inside a normal, emotional world. She was operating inside a machine built on paranoia, inheritance, and violence. And once she took power, she held it better than most men around her. That's the part people avoid saying out loud. Final thought on Lü Zhi: people remember the mutilation. But the real story is about what happens when someone spends years trapped in a system that teaches them compassion is weakness. And honestly, I thought nobody in this video was going to top that. Then I got to Zetian. Now, Zetian's story feels different because she didn't just survive the system, she mastered it. Zetian became the only woman in Chinese history to officially rule as emperor in her own name. And the amount of hatred she received for that is honestly telling, because male rulers killed rivals constantly. Brothers murdered brothers, officials disappeared, entire families got wiped out over power. But when Zetian played the same game better than most men around her, history remembered her like a threat. And maybe she was. She used secret police, political purges, surveillance, fear. People who challenged her had a habit of disappearing. Even members of her own family weren't fully safe. And then there's the story people still argue about centuries later. The accusation that she killed her own infant daughter and blamed another empress for it. Nobody knows for sure if it's true. But honestly, the fact people believed she was capable of it tells you everything about how feared she became. And look, this is the part that got under my skin. Zetian understood something early. If she looked weak for even a moment, the men around her would erase her. So she became untouchable. And the uncomfortable part is, it worked. Under her rule, the empire stabilized in a lot of ways. Government positions opened to more people. Corrupt officials were challenged. The state actually functioned well in certain periods. That contradiction is, well, what makes her fascinating. Because humans are complicated. Someone can be ruthless and intelligent, cruel and effective, terrifying and capable at the same time. Final thought on Wu Zetian. I don't think history knows what to do with women who become powerful without apologizing for it, and I think that's part of why she still makes people uncomfortable. But Fu Hao's story honestly unsettled me in a different way, because this wasn't palace paranoia anymore. This was a world where violence happened out in the open. Now this one honestly feels the most alien to me, because Fu Hao came from a world where violence wasn't hidden, it was part of everyday life. Fu Hao lived during the Shang dynasty, centuries before the others, and this wasn't elegant palace politics anymore. This was Bronze Age warfare, close-range killing, chariots, ritual sacrifice, kings proving authority through violence, and somehow, in that world, Fu Hao became one of the most feared military leaders of her time. Not symbolically, actually leading armies into battle. Oracle bone inscriptions show her commanding thousands of soldiers during military campaigns against rival groups, which means this woman lived close to violence constantly. Close enough to hear it, close enough to smell it. And honestly, I think modern people underestimate what environments like that do to the human mind. Because in Fu Hao's world, power and violence were inseparable. Military success meant status. Blood rituals meant spiritual legitimacy. Human sacrifice was tied to religion and authority. That was normal to them, and that's uncomfortable to sit with, because we want history to separate good people from bad people. But ancient societies didn't think like that. Fu Hao was respected because she embodied the values of her world: strength, control, victory. Final thought on Fu Hao. She wasn't feared because she rejected her culture. She was feared because she became exactly what that culture rewarded. And honestly, that's the thing connecting all three of these women. People love calling them monsters because it creates distance. It lets us believe they were uniquely evil instead of shaped by violent worlds. But the truth is, those systems were already brutal long before these women entered them. The courts were brutal, the politics were brutal, the wars were brutal. These women just adapted to survive inside them, and sometimes they adapted better than the men did. I think that's what really unsettles people, because most of us want to believe we would stay kind if we lived in those worlds. But history keeps showing the same lesson over and over again. Human beings become whatever survival demands.